What is the real secret to creating super tasty, memorable guitar solos? Is it technique? Is it phrasing? Is it tone? Yes, all of these things are super important, but honestly, nothing will improve your soloing more than one very simple thing. Chord knowledge! Being aware of exactly what chords you're playing over and exactly which notes you should be hitting over these chords is one of those things that really makes you sound like a pro. In the previous lesson, I talked about the fundamentals of soloing over chords and how you can start to implement it into your playing with 5 easy to follow steps. So I would highly encourage you to go and watch that first. So in this lesson, we're going to be expanding on the concepts we used last time with some more advanced ideas you can implement. These will not only make your solos far tastier and far spicier, but will also greatly expand your fretboard knowledge and encourage you to play more horizontally instead of vertically. So in the previous lesson, we looked at using bar chords as a basis for navigating the neck. For example, when you're soloing over an A minor chord, you can use the notes of this A minor bar chord and this A minor bar chord as your home. That's great and works super well, but the problem is we're missing the notes of large parts of the neck, so we need to fill in those gaps. In between our 2 bar chord shapes, we have this 3rd shape. This shape is often referred to as the D minor shape, as it's just the open D minor chord shape moved up the neck. Unfortunately, we don't have enough fingers to play the entire chord starting from the root, but we can play the top 4 notes or bottom 4 notes like this. So now, if we sandwich that chord in between our bar chords, we now have more of the neck available to us. Thus, a bunch more notes we can play. So let's try jamming over an A minor drone using only the notes of our 3 chord shapes. That's great and gives us a lot more options, but we can still take things one step further. The final step is to turn each of our 3 chord shapes into their full arpeggios. This will give us literally every single note of A minor up the entire neck. And you'll be very happy to hear that it's not actually that much extra work compared to what we were doing before. So this A minor becomes this arpeggio. This A minor becomes this arpeggio. And finally, this A minor becomes this arpeggio. If you're an avid sweep picker like yours truly, then you're probably already familiar with these arpeggio shapes, and hopefully you're starting to see now how this all sort of fits together. So let's have another jam over that A minor drone, but this time using all of our notes of A minor up the entire neck. If this is all new to you, then you should make memorizing these 3 arpeggio shapes your absolute #1 priority. Because this is honestly the fucking holy grail when it comes to not only soloing over chords, but also becoming more confident at playing across the entire fretboard. I would definitely say that out of everything I've learned in my 20+ years of playing guitar, this was like the single biggest turning point and that sort of eureka moment where everything just sort of clicked. So obviously the next step after you finish memorizing all 3 of the core arpeggio shapes is to start practicing switching between different chords. I've prepared the following backing track that continuously switches between the chords A minor and D minor. And I want you to practice switching between these two chords and creating a coherent solo which uses only the notes of our 3 core arpeggio shapes. Starting using only the notes of A minor, then switching to D minor, and then back to A minor, and so on and so on. I'll start you off with my own example. Bloody good job! So, once you've gotten comfortable with all that, it's time to start expanding on it and adding in some extra notes and not just the ones of the chord shapes. But the question is, which ones? So, I'm sure you're aware of your basic major and minor scales and know, for example, that if you're in the key of A minor, that you should be using the notes of the A minor scale. It's absolutely fine if your train of thought stops there, but if you're really wanting to take your soloing to a pro level, then it's incredibly important to know exactly what relationship each interval of the scale has with its corresponding chord. For example, this note A, this note F, and this note B are all perfectly in key, but all have very different flavours. Listen carefully as I play each note of the A minor scale over an A minor chord. Each of these intervals has varying levels of stability, starting at very safe and getting increasingly spicier. As a general rule of thumb, you can group the intervals as follows. The very safe intervals are the root, 4th and 5th. The intervals with a bit more flavour are the 3rd and 6th. And the intervals with a lot more flavour are the 2nd and 7th. So what this basically means, right, is that the root, 4th and 5th are always going to be safe bets to land on because they're very stable intervals that are kind of harmonically neutral or agnostic. The 3rd and 6th, while still stable, have a bit more flavour because they're more specific to the harmonic context, i.e. they change depending on what type of scale it is you're playing. And finally, the 2nd and 7th are even spicier because they are so close to the root. These particular intervals should only really be hung on in very specific situations where you really feel they could enhance the melody, right? And aren't as safe picks as, say, the root, 4th and 5th. So, to give all of this waffling a bit more context, I'm going to play 2 different solos for you now over the same backing track. The first solo is going to predominantly make use of the safe notes, using only the spicier intervals as passing tones. Whereas the second solo will be a bit more adventurous and lean in more to those spicier intervals. So as you can hopefully hear, when you know what you're doing, utilizing all of these different intervals to their full advantage can really add an extra dimension to your solos. To help you develop more of an ear for this kind of stuff, I would highly recommend you practice interval training as often as you physically can. The end goal is to instantly be able to recognize every single interval in relation to the root notes and be able to understand the use case and flavor for each one. Thank you so much, guys. I really do hope these little masterclass lessons have been useful for you. And if there's anything you don't quite understand, then please feel free to comment down below. And remember that for many more lessons like this, as well as Discord access, personal feedback from me, and a whole load of other sick stuff, then please do feel free to check out Bradley Hall's Guitar School at the link down below, where you can sign up for absolutely free. Cheers, guys. See you next time.